Hello, YouTube, Facebook, the interwebs. How are you? It's been a while. I haven't made a ton of videos or even abstract transmission podcasts for a while. Just a lot of stuff going on. Tigo, for those of you who are familiar with the podcast, Tigo kind of hasn't been able to kind of jump back into things as quickly as we had hoped. So I'm going to be doing things, interviews by myself for a little while. But some new changes there, obviously. We're uploaded to YouTube. Go ahead over if you get a chance and click on the channel. Abstract Transmissions is the name of the channel, and we've got all the old episodes uploaded as well as the new format, which is going to be Zoom. So the old episodes are not video Zoom recorded. They were just audio recorded. So we put up a stock photo for anybody who wants to listen to those existing episodes. But yeah, there's a little bit of changes there in the new format, but it's going to open us up to a lot of guests and stuff. So enough of that. Back to the Cuffy Proctor stuff, which is politics, music, so on and so forth. I think this is really going to shift more towards vlogging for politics. It mainly relative to UBI. Most of you know me not from the abstract transmissions, but as Yang Gang and Math Fest here in New Hampshire, primary stuff. I called a lot of people during the primaries because I really believe in Andrew Yang. But I'm not a huge Biden supporter, right? Initially, and I struggle with that. And I always have. Major party candidates are not exactly my favorite to vote for. So that being said, I've voted third party my entire life as an adult, voting adult. This election, I will be voting major party for Joe Biden. Not because I like him. I don't think many people actually are a big fan of him. I think a lot of people are getting behind him as well as, some of the other ideas because of Kamala Harris, because of, Andrew Yang. Whether you support them or not is not so much the important part as it is what are the policies and stuff that they're going to get behind, which for me, I am libertarian in a lot of things. I don't believe the government can fix a lot. Right? I think they've had a long time to do that, and they've failed. Things need to be updated. And I'm very much with Yang. I don't think that government is bad for everything. I just don't think that they do very good for anything so far. I mean, they really drop the ball frequently. But you're right. He's right. When it comes to the U.S. Postal Service, disability, stuff like that, there are certain things that only a large government entity could do, and I don't think that the private sector could really manage. But there's very few things that I believe, personally, and I shouldn't say this is just a fact, but more that I believe that there are very few things that the private sector can't. There's very few things that the private sector can't fix. And I think that we're so afraid of that because of the fears of capitalism. I'm not going to stunt for crony capitalism or corporatism, obviously. The same way I'm not going to stunt for Joe Biden. But I do believe that there's a benefit in capitalism as a financial means for social programs. You look at countries that are hailed to as socialist countries, and really they are socialist in the aspect of their programs for their citizens, but not so socialist when it comes to the actual form of government that they have. Capitalism pays for all of that, and it reinforces that. So I think that back and forth is just like Yang said, it's irrelevant. It's an archaic dichotomy that we kind of got to let go of because it's not doing any of us any favors, and it hasn't done us any favors for quite a long time. I went on a tangent there, and I tend to do that frequently, but I think what I'm getting at is that laissez-faire capitalism, it can work, and I think we don't need as much government as people think we do. There's a lot of that reliance, which people voluntarily pay their taxes as it is. And I think that people would do that if they have it to give. And there's a feeling of abundance and whatnot. I don't think that would be taxed. I mean, voluntarism, I think, is legit. I don't think there's a lot of things that people don't want to do to help each other out. I don't think we're naturally malicious. I think that as time goes on, we become more. I think, I'm optimistic, and I think that the negatives slowly start to morph into something entirely different. If we can work out those problems, like a riddle, right? I think that aside from being kind of cryptic there, the goal is to shift ourselves to a position where we can all kind of work together, but without a gun against our head, I guess is what I'm getting at, is that it's not all rainbows and rose-colored lenses, obviously. And I think that socialism perspective is kind of unrealistic because governments always need control, and there's always people in positions that want to seize control and take power. And there's always people that are going to lie and use the agenda to get themselves into that position so they can seize the power. Is the idea of socialism flawed? I think so in a lot of ways, and I think there's a lot of benefits to the idea of social safety nets. But this video isn't about socialism and capitalism, and I think I've gone a little bit on too long about it. The big important thing is this election. Obviously, Joe Biden is not a hard left progressive like Trump is trying to paint him out to be. They just really massively failed on that perspective, because he's probably the most centrist. Like, 1 minute he's the centrist 1994 crime bill guy, right, that incarcerated a ton of people and all that stuff. And then the next minute he's a liberal left-wing extremist, which is just not rooted in reality in any way. I'm not a fan of Joe Biden. Like, I think he kind of doesn't really give a shit about a lot of people in the working class because he doesn't understand it. I shouldn't say doesn't give a shit, but just isn't connected to that because he's been in public life for so long. Do I think he's a bad person? I don't know. Do I think he's a pedophile? I don't know. We don't know. Unfortunately, we can never really know what somebody's intentions are. So there are people out there that just get a little too close and don't know social cues and understand certain things. People on the spectrum frequently don't understand, some of the social cues. People like me with ADHD struggle with some of these things. And it's a very real possibility that it's something that Joe Biden struggles with. We don't know. I'm not making excuses for him, and I could really give a fuck less. But what I am saying is that we're not going to make it through this election with Joe. We're not going to make it through another 4 years of Donald Trump. It's not realistic without volatile and crazy things have gotten in the last couple of years that things will get any better under his presidency for another 4 years. Do I think that things are going to get better with Joe Biden? A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think that things will start to go back a little bit to the previous pendulum swing to the left, which I think is necessary when we have this duopoly that goes back and forth constantly. It's not really necessary for us to have that, but we've had it for so long that now to just pull the blanket out from under it, pull the rug out from under it, would just be irresponsible. So the Joe Jorgensen approach is eliminate government, eliminate taxes and federal income tax, and eliminate the Fed, and all that maybe would have been valid back in 2008. Now, I think that you're playing with hand grenades because things have become so rickety and just unhinged would be the word that I guess I would use. We really have to be careful I think moving forward, and I don't think that the Democrats will be that careful. I think they're going to bloat spending because there's no other choice in their mind. That this is the only way out of the pandemic is to spend more money. I think the conservatives are going to not like it, but they're not going to have any power because they're going to lose the Senate, the House, and the presidency, the executive seat. I feel very confidently that that's going to happen. Trump has just failed so badly that the people who took a chance on him before aren't going to take a chance on him now. A lot of elderly people that voted for him before aren't going to or are dead because of the decisions that he made. Just to downplay stuff there's a lot of bad decisions that I don't think he's going to recover from, and that Joe Biden actually could win from. And I think this is really the easiest way for him to win, is because Trump is so awful that people like, fine, I'll vote for Biden because I'm so terrified of the future, voting out of fear, which I get it is not acceptable in the eyes of almost everybody who's in the middle. They just, I get that. And it's just like, I don't want to hear people fucking preach to me about voting in the middle and how I'm just voting for one of the worst evils. Yeah, I know. And every other fucking election, I voted third party. Most of you voted for fucking Obama. So I really don't want to hear it from people when they think that they, have that perspective of, oh, well, you're just voting for to continue the same bullshit. Yeah, I am, just a little bit longer. So maybe we can dismantle things with a wrench instead of a fucking grenade. The machine is working and fucking rickety and, almost going to break. How do you fix that machine, right? You kind of have to be careful. You kind of have to take your time and use the right tools. Or you could blow it apart like with a grenade and try to rebuild a new one. But what is the collateral damage in that explosion? Who gets hurt? Who's protected? There's just a lot of things there that I don't think the libertarianism is factoring in, or that Ayn Rand could have ever foreseen. Like AI, for example. Objective reality and objective realism, or whatever it is, objectivism, is great in a lot of ways when it comes to free market. There's a lot of things that the market isn't going to solve or doesn't have incentives to solve. And so I do think that a pendulum swing back to the left is almost kind of necessary at this point to rebalance things. And whether you're on the left or you're on the right or you're a gray Jedi, I think that balance is the big thing here. It's become very unbalanced in 4 years, and I think the whole country's become very unbalanced in 4 years. And it's not the fault of the president. I really don't think. I think this is actually, he's a symptom, like Yang said. He is the fallout of bad policies, a lack of education, income inequality and resources that have shifted so grossly to people who just have more than they're ever going to spend or ever need, and it's just sitting and not really doing anything because it's not really collecting interest. It is on paper, but those are just numbers and zeros in a fucking account. Like, nobody's keeping paper tracks of any of this shit. It's all digital. Everything's digital. It wouldn't take much for us to fall apart and collapse, and that's the thing that I'm very, very scared of. And I would just like a little less swaying and a little more fucking back to kind of how things were a little bit before. I wasn't happy about that. Obama and Biden were dropping as many bombs on, desert countries as anybody else was. The Middle East got bombed with drones and stuff, just like the other guys. Maybe not as much, maybe less. Those are all semantics that I'm not going to work out. But the fact is, we still were pushing interventionist policies, which don't do anybody any good. I think that's where Tulsi was going. And really, she should have been the candidate. I think that she would have single-handedly destroyed Trump, and there wouldn't even be this point. We wouldn't even be here now with him shouting on stage and shit. It just wouldn't happen. And I think that the Democrats really need to reevaluate their entire party. They're not going to, because they're probably going to win this election and feel vindicated. But the change comes from operators like Andrew Yang. And I think that, his kind of capitalist fueled positivity, rather, and just like he's playing 5D chess, and he knew when he hit the wall with the media that was going to end probably his chance at the presidency. When he got to here in New Hampshire, and he didn't get that. I think New Hampshire was the pivot. And it was all hinged on us here. But I think there's just too much. I think there was just too much bias and too many sketchy things happening there. And I think when he saw that, the media really kind of stepped in and tried to control everything with the Democrats. He became the media. He joined CNN. Homie is on cable news talking to the world and the nation. And people know who he is now. They know what UBI is now. He accomplished what he set out to accomplish. He wasn't really trying to be president. And can you fucking blame him? No. Nobody wants that job except for a narcissist. Or somebody that really wants to fix things, And I think that, somebody like Yang is an operator, and he's getting into the Democratic Party to change it because he believes that he can. Whether he can or not, I don't know. That's the future will tell there. But he's setting himself up well to run again, maybe even against an incumbent. I don't know that the Democratic Party would do that. And if Joe Biden gets it, I think that it's going to look an awful lot like this. Joe Biden is president for 2 years. Kamala Harris finishes out the lame duck session. They use that as leverage to get her to be the next president. See how well she's done in 2 years after there was Joe Biden's mental cognition declines or whatever. And then, they say, well, I think that the best case scenario would be that to happen, actually. And that they start to see, the need to have a psychiatrist in the White House, just as a normality to normalize the mental stigmas of mental illness and so on and so forth. And I think that the Democrats will probably play it off a certain way. Put her in a position so she can success for 2 years, so she can end up the president for the next 8 years after that, because the only rule to being president is you can't be elected more than 2 terms. She can go in as vice president for a half a term or a year or almost a full term and then still finish out 2 terms as president. Because she has to be elected on her own twice. She fell into that position not from election, so on and so forth. Assuming that were to happen, it would be a really great way for them to position themselves to make massive changes in the Democratic Party over 12 years and ensure that she stays president for the next 12 years. And I'm not saying this is all a good thing. I think this is manipulation of the rules. But that's how politics works now. It is 5D chess, and everybody's moving different pawns at different places. Lobbyists here, lobbyists there. Things shift. There's deals, people shaking hands. It's a lot like being in sales. It's a lot like building relationships. When I worked for Samsung, same idea. You're going out, you're meeting people, you're building relationships, you're using those relationships to leverage, certain things that you can do. And friendship and all that is how you do it. You schmooze people, you bring them cupcakes, get them to buy Samsung appliances. Not to drop the name, but that's who I used to work for a third party that worked for Samsung. And Yeah. Not disparaging, but that's how most businesses operate when you're a sales manager and you're covering a field territory, which isn't far off from campaigning. You're trying to win over hearts and minds. And it's not always the easiest thing to do, but you got to be an operator. You got to be a friend and a buddy, but also know how to speak to certain points. And so I definitely think that Yang has put himself in a position to better things down the road. Maybe not as president, but I don't think he really wants to be president. We may all want him to be president, but I don't think he really wants to be president. I think he did exactly what he wanted to do, and I don't think he's ever going to run again. And if he doesn't, I'm okay with that, only because he's made such a huge impact to an entire perspective on the Democratic Party, data as we know it, our need for the privacy of data and to get paid for our own personal information. Relooking at drug use, drug abuse, sex workers, especially now in the pandemic where sex work has increased probably exponentially with not just, what everybody assumes is sex work, but OnlyFans, stuff like that too, is probably exponentially increased because everybody's at home. And I think that this is ways that capitalism can benefit society. UBI is a great way to reinforce people at home making YouTube videos, making even women with OnlyFans accounts, bakers. The list doesn't end. People and entrepreneurs, and I do believe that all those are entrepreneurs in their own way, and they all have the right to kind of do their thing and have support to do it, because that's what needs to happen in the freest and most rich country of the world. I mean, we are the freest, arguably, country not arguably, we are the freest country in the world. And I'll say that being pretty left-leaning on a lot of things. I'm not a nationalist at all. I have an anarchy sign tattooed on my arm from when I was a kid. I definitely swayed anti-government for a very long time. Things change when you have children, but I still am that person from a long ago that can see things from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think that being part of changing the world is becoming a part of it and having to make some sacrifices to your own ideologies, your own perspectives, and try to be wrong more often. And that's what all of these fucking people could learn from, is themselves in trying to be wrong more often. It's good to be wrong, because then you learn how to be right. You learn what mistakes you made so you can improve them to be better. And it's not like an appearance thing, right? Like everybody else sees you as better. It's like, no, you're genuinely benefiting yourself by self-improvement. It never works to, lie to yourself about who you really are. And we have to look at the president as that example. He is somebody that is really not in touch with reality, and probably not in touch with his own psyche. I mean, not probably. I mean, it's almost definite that he has no self-awareness at all. And it's almost embarrassing to watch sometimes. It's cringy. And I don't think I've ever seen that with somebody in a public figure like that. Like, because he was, reality TV show guy for a long time. And like, even that, like, he was so much more, I think, confident back in the days of the, whatever the frig it was called. There, You're Fired. That's what I'm going to call it. You're Fired. Because that's what it was to me. He is somebody who's so self-involved that can't get out of their own way. And because of it, I mean, it will be the end of his presidency. I'm pretty sure it will cause him to lose the presidency. But what I'm really worried about, what that looks like. Because his supporters and him, he's already accepted, they're not going to accept that they lost. They're convinced they're going to win. And it's just not realistic. It's not based in reality. But most of what they're campaign is been not based in reality. So my concern is this. Civil war is a big possibility in reality. And I think it's dangerous for us to not take him seriously. Because I do think his stand back and stand by comments are being listened to. And I do think that they're ready to take back their government or take back their country from tyranny if it happens in their mind. And that's what stand back and stand by meant. I don't think it meant the racist thing that people think. I think it means his supporters, he wants them to stand by and wait for him to lose the election so then he can claim it's a coup or whatever the fuck he wants, and use them as pawns, which is sad because they're not going to stand up against the U.S. military, and it will be pretty awful. And I think there'd be a divide in the U.S. military. I think it'd be very chaotic, and I think that foreign adversaries are waiting for that to happen to step in, because we are not what they want. And it's been a very long time coming. They've been waiting for us to teeter and then come in and just pick up the pieces and be the savior or whatever it is as another country. I don't think they'll invade, but they will wait till things are bad and pose it as help. That turns into invasion. And that's a wild perspective, right? I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm throwing out, Michael Bay movies for ideas. So it could be pretty crazy, right? But I do think that there's some possibility that it could happen. So regardless of who you voted for last election or what, it's you in that voting booth. Vote for who you want, right? Shit, libertarians vote for Joe Jorgensen. Most of the people voting for Joe Jorgensen are just going to hurt Trump and put Joe Biden into the position. I'm okay with that, honestly, because it's two birds with one stone. It's going to show the third party needs to be respected and seen as valid and real. And not shrugged off and joked about. Like, the Libertarian Party is kind of laughed at. I'm sorry. I mean, I understand why. We're just as divisive and as the other two parties. You get a group of people together, it's going to happen. We have our own, opinions and ideologies and this and that. And right now we're the underdog. But what happens if we become a major party? Does it turn into a three-party system where three parties are trying to control things? I know that we're supposed to be the anti-government party, but I wonder that sometimes. There are a lot of conservative lights that are in libertarians now that I don't think really understand libertarianism or even the concept, let alone non-aggression principle and all those things. Here I am I'm talking about Biden, right? It's crazy, but we're in a crazy spot. This is a crazy time. I urge you to vote. Get out there early and do it. And it doesn't matter who you're voting for, right? You'd be voting for Trump, vote. I don't care. Get out and vote. It's important that we all vote all the time. But it's more important that you vote in your local elections. Local politics impact you more than any other politics. And we all worry about the president and Joe Biden. Fuck them. Fuck them. Fuck both of them. Right? Who we vote for, whatever it is, a lot of people are reluctantly voting. But fuck them for putting us in this position and making everybody think that what they do matters the most. They really don't impact us as much as you think. They do, to an extent. I think Trump is the example of that, right down to the abortion legislation down in Georgia and these southern states, like whatever it is. some crazy shit's happened, and it's directly correlated to that. So don't get me wrong. But those things passed because of local elections, local primaries, local state elections, state, city, all that stuff. Pay attention to your towns. The taxes that they're running in your towns, it impacts everything, right down to your rent if you don't own. Your registration of your car here in New Hampshire is impacted by the individual townships, so on and so forth. We pay more depending on how the taxes are rated. And we have some of the least taxes in the United States. No income tax, no no income tax, and no sales tax. They make it up in certain areas, kind of, but we still less taxes than most. I think your local elections are the most important out there. And that's what's going to change it. Getting local people into positions to change minds. And doing so at that state level or whatever allows new ideas and fresh faces. And that's what we need to be able to change things. You got to get rid of these long-term seats in, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, all of them. It needs to be cycled out. Yeah, pack the court, 27 judges, 9 cycle out. So you're always constantly keeping it somewhat balanced for them to vote on it, but also you've got 9, 3 different sets of 9 judges. That would be a great thing. That keeps things cycling. You get to hear more cases, and but that's all really, extra stuff. I know this has been a long video, but it's been a long time, and I'm going to start making these videos more frequently and try to do the live streams of the debates. So that should be interesting too. Seriously, if you get a chance, join me through the debates and stuff. This has been a very erratic, not really structured video vlog, I guess. But I was just kind of going off whatever popped in my head. Mainly because that's where we are right now. I thank you all for subscribing to this YouTube channel, and your opinions and comments are always welcome, especially ones that don't agree with me. I want to talk to people that think differently, as we all should. And remember, where we come from a lot of times is a personal thing, based on our own personal experiences, biases, reactions, deaths, birthday parties, everything. Movies we've seen, we're all different because of our experiences. So we can't expect everybody to agree on everything. Matter of fact, none of us are going to agree on everything 100%. There's always going to be disagreements and different perspectives. But listening and talking about those perspectives is what makes us a better country. Our freedom to speak and to offend is what makes us a better country. Thank you.